Well, welcome back to another episode, you guys. I'm here with Jordan Berry today, and Jordan's got just an awesome inspirational story to share with us about his path. And we talk a lot of times on this podcast about entrepreneurship and not just that, but just growing as humans and evolving our lifestyles. And I think one thing we oftentimes do is, and not that there's, I guess, necessarily anything wrong with it, but a lot of times we build our lifestyles around our careers or our jobs, right? We just kind of wake up one day and we're like, well, how did I get here? And I'm working my 9 to 5, or maybe I'm a small business owner, but the things I want to do in life kind of dance around that. So I got to know Jordan over the past couple of weeks and his story. And one thing Jordan's done is he's kind of built the opposite. Is he said, okay, this is what I want my lifestyle to be. I'm going to build my career around that. So Jordan, thanks so much for being with me here today.
Hey man, thank you for having me on. Super excited to be here and chat about life and business and all the things.
Love it. Love it. And Jordan is the all things expert in the laundry space for those who are kind of new to Jordan. And he's an entrepreneur, he's an investor, he's a coach, he's a teacher of all things laundry. He's been in the laundromat game, and now he's teaching others how to do it successfully. He's vast amount of knowledge of not just the laundry industry, but also passive income and, again, building a lifestyle around it. So, again, Jordan, I think a lot of times we get sucked into social media and we see these people that are like, do this or do that, and you can live the high life and we all know life's tough, right? We all know we go through ups and downs in career and personal lives. And it's tough to maintain the vision of what we want out of life. But I thought it's so refreshing to see, for anyone that's maybe skeptical of, can I really build, quote unquote dream life, is to really kind of unpack your story and where you're at. And for starters, let's just go where you're in Hawaii right now and you've moved there. And so kind of take me through, you've been in Hawaii now, what, for a year or 6 months? Or?
No, a couple months.
Okay.
Got here in November. We're recording in February right now, so a few months here.
Right on. Yeah. Love it. And you're originally a California guy, is that right?
Yeah. So I'm from Southern California and was living in Orange County. Was able to keep that house, so I've got that as a fallback plan. But moving, I guess, a little bit from paradise to paradise over here. But I will say that I'm right across the street from the beach, and when whales are jumping in your front yard, it's tough to not appreciate where you're at that moment. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Puts it all in perspective. I do have to tell the listeners, about 2 weeks ago, I'm on a call with Jordan, and I said, man, it looks beautiful where you're at. And he spun his camera around, and it was just this, beautiful view of the ocean. I was like, oh gosh, that's your view every day. He said, yeah. So the conversation goes on, and about 20 minutes later, Jordan's politely, trying to be respectful, and he's in the call, and his eyes keep kind of drifting above the camera. And I was like starting to think about it. And I said, Jordan, are there whales where you are right now? Are you whale watching? And you were like, yeah, you kind of felt bad about it, but it was amazing.
Yeah, it was true.
Is that a pretty common occurrence?
Oh, I think at this time of the year, I mean, listen, I'm pretty new over here, but I think in the winter time, it's pretty common for the whales to be breaching right now. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's Oahu. Is that where you're at?
Oh, I'm in Oahu. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Okay. So Jordan, kind of take us back through, where this all started with you. Were you always this entrepreneurial mindset? Were you this little kid that said, man, someday I want to wake up and I want to own a ton of laundromats and be the laundromat connoisseur? How did the path start for you?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I just dreamt as a kid, like most people dreamt as a kid, like I just want to own laundromat.
No, it's either not professional athlete or a laundromat owner, right?
Yeah,
it's one of the
astronaut, athlete, maybe YouTuber nowadays, but most of us have had our laundromat phases and, have not been able to realize them. No, not at all. Not at all. So I was a pastor and a youth pastor for 15 years. And that was sort of what I was doing, and got to a point, had young kids and stuff, was just ready to sort of transition out of doing that as a job, was trying to figure out what to do. And funnily enough, this was a little over a decade ago. My idea of what to do was to rent out our house in Southern California and take the little money we had in the bank and come buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii. And that was my plan. And my wife actually was the one who said, I have a family friend who he's working a high tech job, making good money, but working 70, 80 hours a week. And he bought one laundromat and replaced that tech income and was working 5 to 10 hours a week. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that sounds really good. Money coming in, not a whole lot of time going out. Let's do that. And, and I'd love to say, and it all went exactly like that. And here I am in Hawaii right now, enjoying the high life. And it did not go like that for us. It did not go well. We ended up, I call it learning a lot of expensive lessons. Another way of saying we lost a lot of money, made a lot of mistakes, and honestly had some real dark times early on there, trying to figure out, there's a lot of stats that float around about laundromats, 95% success rate, easy business, boring business is our big buzzword right now.
Sure.
But I'll tell you, it was anything but easy and boring when I was losing money and trying to figure out this business a decade ago and feeling like I was like the only one in the world failing at this easy business because everybody else was successful. So it was a lot of tough lessons there. And there was a lot of evenings that I was working at that laundromat wishing I was on the beach in Hawaii. I'll tell you that for sure.
Right. Okay. So back up, you're a youth pastor, and then your wife says, hey, here's this option. What was it scary to leave, kind of a guaranteed, income? You're doing the Lord's work. You're doing, this thing that you felt maybe you were called for. Was it we talk a lot of times on here about the whisper. Did you just feel like maybe it was something leading you to something new, just something you were meant for?
I don't know that it felt like something I was meant for. Something new for sure. But it just felt like I didn't feel like I was being called to something. I just felt like, okay, it's time to take a break from doing ministry. It takes a lot of time and emotional energy, and I had young kids, and my wife was a stay-at-home mom for the first time. She's a special ed teacher, was staying at home. And so it was just, time of life where it was like, let's see if we can do something different here. So I don't know that I was necessarily being called to laundromats. It just was an opportunity that popped up and felt like it might be a good fit for us. And maybe God was calling me to it because he felt like there were things I needed to learn, because I learned a whole lot about business, of course, and investing and all that, but also a lot about myself and other people. And so there's a whole lot of lessons there. I don't know that I felt like it was a calling at that time, but maybe it was, now that you say it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever feel that maybe at times you think that's what it is, but then you find out a year, 2 years, 5 years later is only preparing you for something else, right? It was like that maybe wasn't the calling, but it was like the appetizer. It was the setup.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like that a lot too. And I talk to a lot of people who are, a lot of people say to me like, hey, I've been thinking about buying a laundromat for years. And, like when I ask them like, well, why haven't you done it yet? What's holding you back? A lot of times it comes down to fear or, being risk averse or, those kinds of things. And, or lack of knowledge is another one too. Right. But I've found, like I hit some of my darkest times early on in that first laundromat experience. But I have found that that's life is hard, right? Like that's part of the path, and you can't get anywhere that you want to go in life without going through some of that. And so if you know that going in, and you can have confidence that the path doesn't end in the dark times, right? Like the path doesn't end when you feel like you're at your worst. That is just part of the path, and you keep going, right? And if I hadn't kept going, and there were moments where I was like, okay, I can either, jump ship here and bail out and go find something new to start, or go back to being a pastor or whatever. There were a lot of moments where I was thinking maybe that was the best way to go, and maybe it would have been, I don't know. But because I kept going, it's led me to a path that I really enjoy now a lot, and I'm where, ironically, I was trying to get in the first place. Watching whales jump in my
Yeah.
front yard.
Yeah,
So
it's wild how it seems the destination was there, but the progress is not linear, right? I feel like it's the graph you see is up, down, way down, then back up, and two steps backward. Is that kind of how you felt?
yeah, for sure. And it's listen, a little bit of this is being idealized here, right? Like I am in a house across the street from the beach, but you may hear traffic in the background because there's people on the street, and the house is a fixer uppers that we're fixing up, and that is, so it's not like all sunshine and rainbows. And also, like, the path to get here was not easy. Like, it was a hard path. And I think a big part of why people don't jump at some of these opportunities sometimes is because I think we just recognize, like, it is going to be hard, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not the right path for everybody. But if you, what's the quote, like Jim Rohn, or who, I can't remember who said it now, but it's like, if you want things that most people don't have, you have to do things that most people don't do.
Yeah,
Right. And that was a real loose butchering of that quote. But
sure.
the concept is there, right? And you've got to be willing to go to some of those dark times if necessary, and take some risks, and suffer some failures, and a lot of times lose some money to get to a point where you want to go. And you got to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's respectable to those who want to go down that path, right? The dark night of the soul of the entrepreneur is the dark days that no one sees. And I can say, well, here's a guy that's built this life and he's living in Hawaii, but there's some very dark days that are private to only you and your wife, maybe, or just sometimes you think about it and you're like, gosh, I never want to go back there again. So it's not for everyone, and that's okay. I think a lot of times, and I lived on this side of the fence of the entrepreneur for a couple of decades now, but I think it's looking to someone who says, hey, kudos to you, man, but that's not for me. That's okay, right? Like, I feel like a lot
Totally.
of those people who maybe feel shame for not wanting that, like, hey, I know I'm not going to get that opportunity because I don't want to take that path. And I think I saw a quote recently too. It said, like, if you're not willing to put in the reps or do the work, then don't start. That's okay, right? But just understand what it's going to take and the risk that it might take to get there. And if you're not willing to do that, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a failure or a loser. So I think a lot of times too, it's that pressure of, like, we have to push and we have to go do the things. And it's like, was this what you really want in your heart of hearts? So you'd be willing to sacrifice if that's the end goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And it reminds me of that, like, Start With Why, right? That book is so powerful. If you haven't read it, you should probably read it. But if you don't have the strong why to get you through the obstacles, and the tough times, and that stuff, like, it's hard. It's already hard to push through the obstacles or overcome the obstacles. It's already difficult to do that. But if you don't have a strong enough why to actually get through that, it's got to be close to impossible, right? It's got to be close to impossible.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I think we all know, right? If we've chased something for the wrong reasons, be it a paycheck or, something shiny object syndrome, then, it doesn't have our why included, it's going to be a failure. So, 100% there. So let's go back to the laundry itself. You get through the learning phases, right, of the early seasons of entrepreneurship, and then how did you make it out of it to say, yeah, I do want to stick with this. This is working. I like it. Did you eventually have success and said, I'm going to open up a second one, or were you kind of good with one for a while? How did that work with expansion?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, we're all friends here. I'll be honest with you. Part of it is, that stat that floats around that's like 95% success rate for laundromats. And I was like, I can't quit being in the 5% that failed. Like, that does not jive with my perception of myself. So that was a big part of the driver to push through that. But the other, if we're just going to be honest here, right? Like the other part of it was I genuinely didn't even know how to get out of I'm losing money. How do I even get out of here? I have like loans to pay. I've got a rent, that I'm, responsible for. I don't know. I don't even know how to get out of it, even if I wanted to. Nobody's going to buy this thing from me because it's losing money. And so that was part of it too, if I'm honest. So it wasn't all, valiant motives here, but there was some of like, I'm just going to buckle down and do it. And part of me was too, is like, so, listen, entrepreneur, I struggle from shiny object syndrome, like the next entrepreneur out there.
Sure.
And, but part of me was like, listen, I could, bail out of this and try to find something new, but I'm just going to be new at that too. And I'm going to have struggles, and I'm already down this path. I've already learned a lot of valuable lessons. Do I just throw them away, or do I, double down on them and say, okay, I paid my dues for these lessons. Let's put them into practice. And that's kind of what led me to my second one. And that one, was brought to me by a broker. It was a seller finance deal. It came with the real estate in LA, which is pretty rare. Wow. But I was still losing money on the first one. So, my thought process, again, kind of foolish and naive, and I knew nothing about business at this point in time, but my thought process was, let's, buy this one to help cover over the mistakes of the first one until I can get that one going. And maybe I learned something at the second one that I can apply to the first one, which is, good in theory. But one thing I didn't anticipate was having two was going to split my attention. So instead of focusing all my attention on this one that has all these problems, I actually now have two, that I have to deal with and juggle side by side. So that was a challenge too. There was challenges kind of all throughout, and new challenges as I went along.
Okay. It's almost like we get a free college degree with all those lessons, and there's just stuff you can't learn in school, right? With some of the stuff but so the reason I bring that up is because then fast forward into laundromat resource, and for those who are a little bit newer to your story and to the laundromat story in general and the laundry game, you took these lessons, and I'm guessing you said, wait a second, if I'm struggling with some of these lessons, like how can I go back and make it easier for first time entrepreneurs, first time investors, first time laundromat owners, operators, and you started Laundromat Resource. Explain a little bit what that is and how you're teaching others.
Yeah. So, I mean, it grew out of, it was never meant to be a business or anything like that. So it grew out of me, like people being intrigued by me owning laundromats and asking me questions about it. And then, somebody had introduced me to somebody who was struggling in their laundromat, and I'd be like, oh, there's more of us. Okay, good. Like I'm not the only terrible laundromat owner out there. I'm the worst, but I'm not the only one that's bad at it. Right. Like, but I was like, listen, at some point I got to a point where I was like, listen, I learned all these expensive lessons. Nobody should have to learn the lessons that I learned the way that I learned them. So that started me off just writing a blog. Right. And I started writing down some of these lessons, some of the things I've learned. And then I was like, you know what? Writing is really difficult. This is pre-ChatGPT era, right? Writing is really difficult. Takes a long time. So I was like, I'll start a YouTube channel and I'll, just make some videos. That seems easier for me anyways. So I started, a YouTube channel and started sharing those lessons. That started taking off. The blog started taking off and getting some attraction and attention. And then I was like, you know what, if I really want to help people, like I've learned a lot, but I don't know everything. And I'm still not the best laundromat owner out there. There's lots of people doing it better than me, even still today. So I was like, I should be talking to the people who are crushing this business. Right. And so that started a podcast where I interview long form interview of laundromat owners and other industry professionals. And I just ask them direct questions about like, hey, what are you doing that's working? And what advice do you have for people trying to get in the business? And, what's one thing that's, crushing it at your laundromat that's making you money that other owners can implement in their businesses? right? And asking questions like that of people and hearing their stories and how they got into this weird business. And that podcast has really taken off as well. So it's been a fun journey. And, along the way, I've been helping people. I've done over 1,000 consulting calls. I did free ones for a long time until I just got overwhelmed and I couldn't do them anymore. So I had to start charging. But for a long time, people were like, man, how do I pay you? Like, this is great stuff. And I didn't even have a way for people to pay me. But it sort of just slowly evolved into a business where now we have, I have a small coaching team. We've got the Laundromat Playbook, which is a program that basically takes you from start to, to buying your first laundromat, to optimizing that laundromat, to scaling your business, whether you want to add a service like a pickup and delivery, which is booming right now, or if you want to add multiple laundromats, build a portfolio of them, right? So we've got a program that takes you through all of that stuff now. And really, the goal of that is to essentially be like a franchise without the franchise, right? To try to de-risk buying this business as much as possible. Right? It's an investment, it's a business. There's always going to be risk, but to try to give people the confidence to take the leap where maybe they didn't have the confidence before, or to just accelerate the process to profitability, or both. Right? Accelerate that process to profitability and helping people, like you mentioned in the beginning, build the lives that they want to build. For themselves and their families, and to be able to do the things they want to do in life.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like laundry laundry resource is not just for the newbie novice level, but you kind of have that program built into, like you said, scalability for even kind of the seasoned vets that wonder what's next in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we work with people who own laundromats who, maybe they're struggling too, and they want to, get their laundromat on track, or they just want to optimize it. And then obviously, we work with people who are trying to scale their businesses because there's a lot of opportunity right now in this industry to scale, both through buying multiple locations, but also through the service side of the industry, which is drop off and pick up and delivery.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, do you think with your previous career being a pastor, do you think you've kind of always had that heart of a teacher? Do you think that's what was a little bit easier for you to pivot into this space? I mean, I think it's cool to have those lessons, but a lot of people don't even think about sharing them or think about, I mean, you did 1,000 calls, and to your credit, most were free or a lot were free, when most people would have said, I'm charging right away for this knowledge I have. Right. So you have this like heart of a teacher. Do you think that kind of came as a transition from your previous life as a pastor?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think so, for sure. I think, really it's one thing that really has been a high value on me is just having an abundant mindset, right? I think, before I started doing, laundromat resource, there really wasn't a ton out there for people. And I struggled a lot to find anybody or anything to help me when I was struggling. And, just feeling like, hey, if I help you succeed in your business, that's not going to hurt my business at all. And in fact, it's probably only going to help my business. Like, and I think that mindset was there, but it wasn't prevalent in our business. It was much more, I'm hoarding information.
Yeah.
Any information there wasn't a lot, but any information there was behind like an association paywall or something like that. And even paying to get behind the paywall, it wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
So I think, being a pastor and just wanting to see people succeed and want to celebrate with people. And like, I'll tell people up front right now, like, selfishly, if you jump on a call with me, my selfish goal is to help you succeed, whatever that looks like for you, so that you buy a laundromat or multiple, or scale it or turn it around, so that you come on my podcast and I can hear the story and we can
Mm.
share it with other people so that they can do the same thing. Right. Like,
Yeah.
that's my selfish motivation for doing a lot of this stuff. And I do think a lot of that comes from, just being a pastor for so long.
Sure. Sure. Well, I think it's exposing in a good way what a lot of people's fears are of the unknown, right? Like, I don't passive income. That sounds cool, but is that really a thing, Jordan? Can I really do that, right? And so I think it's really cool that you are offering the how to, and it's refreshing to be able to a lot of the or what's the secret well, there's really no secret, it's a bunch of things. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Yep.
think that's refreshing. Jordan, you said something that I got to double click on here, and you said you started absorbing the abundance mindset, and that's popped up in sort of my ecosystem a lot lately. I'm reading a book now that talks about that. What's that mean to you? And I guess, how did you transition into the abundance mindset? What's it mean to you, and how are you applying it to your life?
Yeah. So a couple different things. Like, I think in a lot of ways I've had an abundance mindset for a long time without having labeled it. In a lot of ways I've had a fixed mindset without having labeled it that way. And, in terms of, to kind of talk about abundant mindset, let me talk about fixed mindset for a little bit. What that has meant for me in a lot of ways is, that fixed mindset pops up in my life in the sense of, I get like things feel scarce, right? So I would do a lot of DIY stuff. I still kind of have that tendency, and I do enjoy a lot of DIY stuff, whether that's working on the house or the laundromat or whatever, or if it's just kind of learning the hard way, which is how it pops up a lot of times in my life, like with the laundromats, learning things the hard way. And I have that sort of scarcity mindset where I'm like, I don't necessarily want to pay, for whatever. And that's really evolved, for me a lot, where I am willing. And I heard, I forget, I don't know if it was Simon Sinek or somebody said, one of the most powerful things you can do is pay for somebody else's 10,000 hours
Yeah.
and buy their 10,000. And like, that was like a huge, like, aha moment for me, where I was like, yeah, like, why would I not pay somebody who's an expert in whatever it is I'm trying to do? Like, my wife and kids are just leaving right now because they're going to take surf lessons. I was like, why would we not pay this dude who's rad at surfing, live down the
Right.
street from us, to teach us how to surf? Like, why would we not do that? Right.
Sure.
Same thing. Like, if you're getting in, if you're going to spend 100, 200, 500, $1 million on a laundromat or a real estate investment or whatever, why would you not pay somebody who's already bought the expensive lessons, who's already, gone through the ringer, to just tell you how to do it? So my mindset has really shifted in that sense. And in fact, I spend a lot of money, multiple 5 figures every single year, to be in mastermind groups and to have coaching and things like that to help me kind of get to the next level. And that is very anti my nature, right? That is it's like, it's scary to write those checks every year still. Not literally, I don't even own checks, but you know what I mean?
Swipe that card.
Yeah. Swipe that card, dial in the numbers on the website or whatever.
Sure.
Because it's very anti me. But I've just realized, like, listen, number one, there's no limit to how much money you can make. There's no limit to how far you can go. There's no limit to what you can achieve, except yourself and your mindset. And so I'm really like fighting hard to sorry, the dog's yapping.
We're dog friendly here. It's okay.
Okay. He's an Italian Greyhound. They told us that they weren't very barky dogs, and it was a bold-faced lie. No, he's a good dog, though. But I fight really hard to maintain that abundance mindset, because I naturally will drift into that sort of scarce, fixed mindset if I'm not careful, and it holds me back, and I see it hold people back. I can see it very clearly when I'm on these coaching calls, when somebody has this scarce mindset, which I empathize with, but I can see it very clearly in people when it's holding them back from building the life that they want to build for themselves. And I think it happens to a lot of us.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so good to hear. And I have to remind myself daily of it, right? If it's the abundance mindset, or if it's a positive attitude, and we're innately wired, right? thousands of years ago, to be scared of the saber-toothed tiger that no longer is chasing us, right? And we have that fear mindset versus, what happens. I used to have a quote on my board over here that said, assume something, what did I used to say? Assume something magical is going to happen today, right? Like, because if you have that assumption, right, assume it's all going to work out. What if it does? And if you replace that lack of abundance, that lack of success, that lack of positivity, and I'm a big fan of John Gordon and his biggest thing, and it takes me back to is when I say I have to remind myself every day. Zig Ziglar said he was approached by someone long ago that said, "Well, Zig, this self-improvement stuff doesn't work. You have to do it every day." And he said, "Well, yeah, but neither does bathing. That's why we recommend you do it every day, right? It doesn't stay. You have to continue to reapply it every day." So I thought that was pretty good.
Or monthly. I mean,
or month. If you're on the beach in Hawaii, it's no judgment. I don't know that you need to. It kind of goes along with the territory. And
me and my junior hire monthly, whether we want to or not.
Love it. We got the ocean. It's good. Go scrub in the salt. Right. Jordan, with that said, and keeping that abundance mindset in forefront and keeping intentional about it, sounds like you are. Where do you reach for inspiration? I've talked to some guests on here at times, and and you mentioned it too with today's world of technology, and you talked about like blogs and YouTube, but gosh, now mentorship is everywhere. You've mentioned a couple different speakers, authors, and I've mentioned a couple, and it's like, gosh, free mentorship is at our fingertips with everywhere, with all social media, that I can go and I can learn anything I want to know about the laundry industry by listening to your podcast, right? Like anybody can go on and listen to Tony Robbins and get inspired for free, or anybody could go on and listen to something about building rockets by it's there's so much free information out there that oftentimes it can be overload. But where do you find today in your life that you reach for inspiration to, if you're just feeling bogged down or feeling that lack mindset that you just need a recharge?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I would say that, information should never hold you back anymore. There's information is abundant, and especially so now that we have a lot of these AI resources, like ideas are abundant, information is abundant. Like information should never be the thing that holds you back. And it never really is. It's always implementation, and that's why like ideas, you can share ideas. And, you'll hear people say this a lot, like I'll share my idea because you're never going to outwork me. You're never going to out implement me. It's not going to happen. Right. And, I got a buddy, you mentioned Tony Robbins, right? I got a buddy who just joined his like inner circle, highest tier thing. It's $85,000. And, a lot of people might be like, $85,000 to be in Tony Robbins' inner circle. Like like you said, you can watch all this stuff for free. You can get the information for free. Right. But part of it is mindset. Like when you're in a room with 200 people who've all paid $85,000 to be there, there's a lot of motivation there for one, to grow and to implement stuff. But there's a mindset thing that is contagious, and mindset is contagious, right? So you ask like, where do I go to get inspiration? It's around the people who have the mindset that I want to have and that I want to surround myself with. So it's people who have an abundance mindset, but it's also people who are going to hold me accountable. And I mentioned, I spend multiple five figures every year to be around people who are going to say, "Hey, Jordan, you said you're going to do this week. Did you do it?" And not in a way that is judging or berating me, but in a way that is for me, right? In a way that is saying, "Hey, you said you're going to do it. Did you do it?" Not because I want to hound on you that you didn't do it, but because I want you to achieve the things you said you want to achieve. And that's the path to get to it. Right. So having perspectives and mindsets in my life that are different than mine and but also aligned with mine, is really huge. And then also, listen, I consume a lot of books and audiobooks and podcasts. And, one thing I tell my kids is like, it's very important who you let have influence in your life. And, that could be a YouTuber, a TikToker, a content creator. and it's really easy to go down these rabbit holes these days of like mindless, meaningless stuff on the internet, on social media, in magazines and blog posts and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but if that's the primary influence on your life and on your mind, you're probably not going to achieve your goals. And I think it's why a lot of people's goals die and dreams die. Like that's why my dream of owning a laundromat from when I was a kid lived is, no, I'm just kidding. Tried to make it inspirational, but
I love it.
No, but I do think that's so important. Like who you let have influence in your mind, right? Like it's just such a big deal that it's, in my mind, it's worth paying a lot of money to have the right people have influence on me. And you've really got to be proactive about guarding that. So I don't even know if that answered your original question,
so true.
but that's where I'm at.
No, it's so perfect, because I think about it all the time is like, do I want to be involved in this situation or in this room if I just know it's full of negativity? And it's not that I'm too good for those people, but it's, where am I trying to go with my life? And is this, the environment I want it to be in? And it's funny because I was thinking about something a couple of weeks ago. There's that saying that if I talk to other people, if I talk to my friends like I talk to myself, I wouldn't have any more friends, right? It's all some of this negative self-talk we can do. Well, I kind of took that same mindset and, the things I'm trying to accomplish, right? Like if I'm looking at my day and I'm like, well, I'll get to that when I get to that. But I know, I'm going to go to the gym, then I'm going to have breakfast, and I'll just slowly work into my day. And I'm like, wait a second. If I was working on this project for a customer, for a friend, I would have like details for them. Like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to start working on it at 9 a.m. and I'll work hard for an hour on it, and I'll give you from 9 to 10. So if I was going to do that for a customer, if like we put ourselves in the back seat, a lot of times with these things. So I started like detailing like in my calendar, like, no, one of my friends is an entrepreneur, and I've had her on here, Kelsey, and she says, around here, we make promises to ourselves and we keep them. And I think that's just so empowering, right? Like you have to start envisioning that as like how you would say this, you would never let your best friend down or a customer down with a promise. So it's like something simple, like sitting down and working on a project you nailed that. So thank you for elaborating on that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that perspective. Make promises to ourselves and we keep them. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. Jordan, so what's today day-to-day look like? Do you still have laundromats? I know the consulting is just like you said, it's blowing up in the podcast. And by the way, congrats for all that success, because you are, teaching people not only obviously just the game of the laundry industry, but business, entrepreneurship, passive income. And it's really cool to see how you propel yourself with, spending 5 figures a year on your own education. So congrats on that platform. It's clear how you got here. So are you still in the laundromat game, or are you just more focused solely on the consulting piece?
Yeah, still in the laundromat game. I own mostly through partnerships now. Okay. I feel like I've put in my time on the operations side. And honestly, I used to joke early on that, I started out being the world's worst laundromat owner. But I mean, there's maybe a little bit of truth to that. Like I love, typical entrepreneur, right? Like I love starting new things. I love coming up with new ideas. When it comes down to like maintaining things over long periods of time, and like a big part of success in a lot of business, right, is that sort of that franchise model, right? Like same experience every time, same good experience every time, and know what to expect. And like I can do it, and I buckled down for a decade and I did it, but it's not my wheelhouse, not my passion, right? I love doing this stuff. I love talking to people like you and, people who are trying to get in this business, who are trying to do something big for their lives. And I want to be like a little small part of helping people build the lives they want to build. So all that to say, I've relegated myself mostly to partnerships when it comes to owning laundromats now, and have extracted myself from the operations for everyone's good, mostly mine and everyone else's. But yeah, still in the game, want to continue to be in the game and want to actually grow the game, and be involved in more of that. So that's where I'm at. And then also just kind of doubling down on laundromat resource and trying to help people build the lives they want to build. If the vehicle that's going to help get them there is laundromats, that's where I'm at. And, obviously I own real estate and stuff too. And I'm happy to talk other avenues, but obviously, laundromats are my wheelhouse right
Yeah.
now.
Well, that just builds the case for a second visit on the pod. So I definitely want to
That's right.
unpack some of those. So, Jordan, to be mindful of your time here, I've got two final questions for you today. First one is, and for you, I kind of like to tailor into, each guest's, history of the path they got here. So for you, building what you've built through the laundromats into consulting, again, having that heart of a teacher, all the lessons you've learned along the way. What's one thing you've learned about yourself as you've gone through this, gone down this path?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Like I learned that there are parts of myself that I didn't know were there. I mean, I think when you go through tough times, like real tough times, everybody does, right? Real tough times. And, those tough times in the business led to tough times like in my marriage and stuff too, because, when money is a problem, that affects relationships. Right. And so, there was problems there too. And one of the things that, I learned about myself in the dark times that there are things inside of me that I didn't know I had inside of me, right? Good and bad, right? There were depths of strength in there to keep going and to, kind of rise from the ashes and build something. I mean, kind of accidentally, but build something from the failure that I was experiencing that I didn't know was in me. And that was really cool to see. But also there were dark days where I was full of despair and I didn't know, that was in me. And it gives me a sense of empathy for people struggling financially, struggling relationally, struggling emotionally. And it also gives me a sense of empathy for the people who, I used to be like, what are you waiting for? Like you said, you thinking about buying a piece of real estate or a laundromat. Well, just get up there and do it. Like go get after it. But it gave me a perspective of like, hey, there's a reason people don't do it because it's hard. And I I do want to nudge people to get outside their comfort zone and take some risk, but at the same time, like I understand why people don't do it a lot of times or why it takes a long time to work up the courage to go do it. Right. So, I mean, I think I learned a lot about myself in some of the dark times. And also, obviously like I learned a lot about myself, every time I talk to somebody new too. And even in this discussion, I'm like saying things and I'm like, oh, I've never said that before, but that is how I feel. And that's how I think and, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot in
Right.
there.
Yeah. Thank you. Last question for you, Jordan. What advice would you give to someone who hears the whisper of a dream that just seems too scary to chase?
Yeah. Uh, it should be scary. Like if it's not scary, then it's probably not worth chasing. And if it's scary, but it's your dream, uh, what's is it Grant Cardone? He's got the book Be Obsessed or Be Average. Like get obsessed with it. And people will say things, people will think things, probably less than you think they will say and think things. But they will, and they'll have opinions and stuff like that. But listen, if you have a dream, you know, go after it. It's achievable, right? And I think one thing that I've found, at least along the way, is the dream evolves too. Like you might have one dream, and like my dream at one point was to work as little as possible, like a lot of people, and make as much money as possible. And that's not really my dream anymore. That's actually really changed for me. And passive income means something different for me now. Passive income means disconnecting how much time I spend with how much money I make. I still want to spend time, helping people and building and creating and all that stuff. Like I want to do all that stuff still. So my goal and my dream now is not to do as little as possible. It's to do the things I want to do as much as possible and the things I don't want to do as little as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if you have a dream, like get obsessed with it and go after it. And I would say, one of the best pieces of advice I would give is if somebody else has already achieved your dream, find ways to get around them, get in the room with them, you know, pick their brain, pay them if you have to, volunteer for them if you have to, like whatever you got to do. Get around the people who've built the life that you want to build, because it will, again, you can borrow or buy somebody else's 10,000 hours and it'll just accelerate your path there and clarify the path that you need to take to get there, which always, it's not always clear how to achieve those dreams. In fact, most of the time it's not, I would say.
Yeah. Beautiful. Jordan Berry, thank you for joining me today. We will put all your contact information and website in the show notes. Reach out to Jordan for anything and everything to do with laundromats and, gosh, even more than that, life in general. So, Jordan, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Dude, thank you for having me on. Huge honor to be on here. And, shout out to everybody who's listening to this podcast. If you're listening to this podcast, you're making steps towards bettering your life. And I appreciate you. I know how hard it is and how much work it is to put together a podcast. So I appreciate you putting this thing together for people. Pretty cool of what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that.
Make sure you subscribe too.
Yeah. Subscribe. Hit the like button. Yeah. All right.
Hit the like button. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah. Leave a comment. All the things we're supposed to say.
Share all that. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, enjoy the surfing today. I know you're quite a few hours behind, so I'm sure you get some surfing in your future. So go enjoy.
Oh yeah. Early here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, Jordan.